Ted, I fished all my life, which is, as my son says, I'm older than dirt. So it's been a long time. But I'm from Hopkinsville, Kentucky originally, and born and raised in Hopkinsville, went to school in Hopkinsville, graduated in Christian County, went to Austin Peay. After that, and commuted back and forth to Hopkinsville and worked up there and fished again all my life. My dad took me fishing when I was really young, and I fished all my life. I also started collecting antique fishing tackle many years ago, over 20 years ago, and it was through my father that I started collecting antique fishing tackle. And we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in a few minutes. But basically, I fished all my life, and I fished as a youngster. I fished for crappie and bass and anything that would bite. This was back before locators, sonars. I can remember the first plastic worm, if you can imagine that. We fished out of a wooden boat with a 10-horse motor. Somebody had a 15 or 20-horse motor. Man, they were top dogs on the lake. I'm telling you, you didn't mess with somebody who had a 20-horse motor. A 10-horse motor, a 5 to 10-horse motor is what we used. And I remember fishing with baits that I collect today. I'd love to have some of the baits I had when I was a kid. I had one or two of my father's what got me started collecting antique stuff. But anyway, and I remember getting a plastic worm. We saw little worms with beads on them and 2 or 3 hooks in them. But I remember seeing a magazine article in the late 50s, early 60s that showed a Texas rig worm. And I really didn't understand all that. So what I did, had a Mitchell 300, I got a plastic worm, tied the hook with no sinker on this end of my line, just a hook. I inserted it into the plastic worm. No weight now, but I was able to cast it with that Mitchell 300. I fished out of Turkey Creek, which is in the Kentucky side of the lake, and there still is a stump row at the mouth of it. And then this would have been in the early 60s. I went out there with this plastic worm about yay long, and I'd never seen one before without hooks all over them and beads and stuff on them. I threw it out there in June, and I caught a mess of bass. I'm talking, because I could throw it on that Mitchell 300 spinning outfit and would come just slightly below the water and just loaded up on bass. And I thought, this is the best thing since popcorn. Now, again, this was before sonars, or at least we didn't know anybody in those days that would have had a sonar or a fish locator. And that was really right after that, within just a year or two, along about that time frame, we started seeing the green boxes, the Lowrance green boxes locators, but which revolutionized fishing tremendously. That and the plastic
What year
one.
do you think it was, John?
That would have been in the late 50s, early 60s. And in fact, I've got one in my collection now, one of these old green boxes, and you had to put the transducer. They had a rod that you stuck to with a cup, a suction cup that you stuck to the side of the boat, hung over the side, and of course you had a battery inside this. We didn't have batteries to start our motors with. I mean, you had a 10-horse, you cranked on it a lot, most of the time, to get it going. But long before bass clubs, never heard of bass clubs, and loved to fish, and like I said, I fished all my life. Moved to Clarksville in 1965 after getting out of college, and I fished in Kentucky Lake, and then of course Barkley came through around 1965, and I fished around the Blue Springs area before that.
You mean that's when they first flooded it?
Yes, before the dam came in. The dam came in. The water started rising around 1965, 68 in that time frame. And my grandparents lived down there close to Blue Springs and where the Barkley Lodge is now. And their farm, and of course they had passed away, and my aunt owned the land, and about 50 acres of it went underneath the lake, which is now part of it is Barkley Lake. And I was down there at about age 18 at that time, watching where they cleared out the land, and in fact it's a story about that, because the old creek channel of Blue Springs runs through all zigzagged all through that bottom, and it was about a 10-foot drop off below the bottom down there. And I'm thinking, at age 18, I said, boy, when the water gets in here, that's going to be some awful good fishing, because they cut stumps off and left like 10-foot stumps that were going down this creek channel. And sure enough, after water came in, Charlie Bumpus, which is the founder of the Clarksville Bass Club, basically won a boat and won a major tournament down there in the same creek channel that's now filled up. It's silted in, but I won some tournaments from the Clarksville Bass Club in that same area. But boy, but anyway, I was just
you didn't tell me
pointing out-
about that back then. you
But
kept that
anyway-
to yourself.
Anyway, we moved to Clarksville in 1965 after getting out of college. I went to work here and still fished the Kentucky Lake. And then when Barkley came along, we started fishing that at the early stages. Tremendous fishing on Barkley, a lot of small fish at first. And at about the same time, a group of guys got together and formed the Clarksville Bass Club. And it really was an idea of Charlie Bumpus, which is still around, lives on the lake now, and still fishes some. But Charlie was repping certain baits, Sportsman's Worms and several other bait companies. He was repping for them and selling the baits. And in his travels had heard about bass clubs. And at that time, the bass clubs were forming, just beginning to form about that time. And now we're talking, we formed the club in 1972. So this is the early 70s, so we're talking time frame. And the clubs also have tournaments within the club, but also the clubs fished other clubs in competition. So anyway, he called some other guys together that were fishermen, known fishermen around Clarksville. I was a little youngster at that time, and but anyway, we formed a club. It was about, I'm going to give you just about 18 or 20 of us as I remember it. But Charlie was really the ringleader and the person that started this club was Charlie Bumpus. That was Oscar Rankin, very prominent in town, and he handled all of our trophies and things at first in the club. Was one of the charter members. Frank Wooten has passed away, but an excellent, just a friend and an excellent fisherman, and one of the early fishermen.
I had the pleasure of fishing with
Yes,
Frank.
and it's just a little story about him real fast. We were fishing with him in an early tournament. It was in March out of the Bumpus Mills, and we had bad weather. I mean, a storm came through right after kickoff. Started turning cold and raining. I'm out. In fact, we were both out there without a rain suit because we weren't expecting this, and we stayed with it. It's about as cold or tough tournament I've ever fished. We came in at the end of the day. We fished the whole tournament like to died, and we hadn't been in the hospital over it. And at that time, one of the guys caught, it was like 2 fish caught in the whole tournament, and it was caught by the same guy. Billy Ray Miller was who it was that had now passed away, also with a charter member. He caught an 8-pound and a 7-pounder in that tournament, and it was the only fish caught. And he caught him on, I think he said back-to-back cast. I forget which creek it was. It's one on the west side of the Mills over there. But anyway, and our fish was Frank, and we talked about that for a long time after that tournament because we both would not say, "Uncle, let's go in." We both just stayed time frame. It just, I guess, the distance and one thing and another. We went for several years there. I was lucky enough to be top angler 1 or 2 years there, and served as every office in the club, in the Clarksville Bass Club we're talking about now. That formed in 1972. I was president and secretary and treasurer and directors and several different times. And at the time, we had actually, at that point in time, we always had a big election. I mean, we had people running. I mean, you just didn't run for president without competition, and it was always a really good thing. Now, later years, we went into the BASS. We were already always a member of BASS pretty much from the get-go. But then they formed a Bass Federation of clubs across the United States where you could compete in your club and then send a team to a state tournament, and then from state to regional and on into, you could go on all the way to the Bass Classic, Bass Master Classic. And I fished all those state tournaments for 12, 15 years. We started it probably, as I remember it, probably in the 80s, early 80s would be about when we started the Federation. And we were really active in the Federation. I was active I was treasurer, secretary, and vice president and directors for many, many years in the Bass Federation. Stayed real active in the Federation politics until I ran for president and got beat many years ago. But I was really active in the Federation for years and fished all the state tournaments. I made the team. The top 6 for our club would go on to the team, and I was one of the lucky ones that made that. And
I think I fished a couple, 2 or 3.
Yes, you have, and really enjoyed it because we got to meet a lot of people across the state. I went on and made the state team in 1992, I think it was, or somewhere there, 1994, maybe 92. We fished a regional in South Carolina. Tennessee did not do real well in that tournament, and neither did I. But I did have on probably one of the biggest fish I've ever had hung in my life in that tournament. Santee Cooper, that's where that was at. But anyway, the club has prospered over the years, and we've had a lot of good times in that club. And like I said, I am a charter member of the club, and Charlie Bumpus is a charter member. But it's been a good thing. And the other thing about the old days too that's really interesting is that we started a kids rodeo, and we named it after Charlie Bumpus. And it was a kids rodeo that we had. We invited the kids. We advertised in the paper. Invited the kids to a fishing tournament. We give out trophies, and everybody got a trophy or ribbon, and a lot of the merchants donated things to it. It was a good thing. We had it for a number of years, and finally, the last few years, it's been given to I think the TWRA and the Parks and Recreation.
There's an award every year they give out every year at the banquet. It's the Mitchell Proctor White Award. Could you tell us about
a little background on that award? The Mitchell Proctor and White Award was given. It started off. I believe it was the second year of the club. These 3 guys were fishing together on Kentucky Lake, and Roy White had just got a new Ranger boat. And they were pre-fishing a tournament in March or early year north around Bird Creek, Hughes. I think it was Bird, as I remember this. But they were fishing, the 3 of them together. Roy White could not swim at all, and the other 2 fellows could swim. But anyway, we don't know what happened. Someone came along. All 3 were drowned in this accident. Someone came along right after this and found the boat circling, and there was a package of cigarettes floating on top of the water, which means it had just happened. But all 3 drowned. They were recovered. But we think that maybe there was a barge had come through earlier than that, and it was a big wave that hit them. And again, with this a new boat like this, sometimes it's not. When you're running, sometimes if you let go of the steering wheel, for example, or get knocked where you lose the steering wheel, then the boat will spin on you unless your trim tab is set correctly. That's my opinion. Nobody knows. I think they hit a wave. I think one of them fell out in front because the trolling motor was not, anyway. So anyway, we named an award. The club named an award, a sportsman award after that for the true sportsman, the best sportsman that would help people and so forth in the club after that. And I was lucky enough to receive that one year, and it's a great honor. That award is, I still think it's a great honor to receive the award. It was named after these 3 fellows. But it is a nice award for the
guys. So the Clarksville Bass Club was affiliated with BASS from the beginning?
Yeah, once we heard about it, again, I think it was in the early 80s, I remember this. I'm almost positive it would be right around the early 80s. We affiliated with them when they started up and when you heard about them. And still are members of the Federation.
Okay, so when
we've hosted, the Federation also would have the state tournament, and we'd have to have a club somewhere to host that. And as it turned out, Clarksville's hosted that 2 or 3 times I know of over the years, and things have of course changed over the years. But we hosted that and really involved with that too. Particularly the first 1 or 2. The first one we had, I was in charge of on Kentucky Lake many years ago, and we had a great turnout for it. It's all we can handle at Paris Landing that time. And I had contacted Jack Daniel Distillery, and they came in at that time. I don't know what they're doing today, but they had a whole barbecue team at Jack Daniel's, and they came in and put on the whole party for and dinner for the whole tournament there on one of the nights, and they came in and barbecued a whole hog and brought in a lot of refreshments were brought in for that. And but so this was on a Friday night, as I remember it, and that was state. It was going to be a real. Well, I'm getting confused now with another tournament. We had another tournament, that state tournament, that they did the same thing for at Pickwick, that the water rose like 5 feet while they was having that because it poured down rain all night. But anyway, that was we really had a lot of fun with these clubs. The Clarksville Bass Club is just great. The first club in Clarksville and still around.
Now I know that right now that the Clarksville Bass Club is nonprofit and it does a lot of charitable work. Now, has that always been true?
When we started the club in 1972, the first thing we did, we had some guys that sat down. We wrote up a charter. We wrote up incorporations. We incorporated that club, and we also incorporated it as a nonprofit organization. And still are, of course, there's paperwork required and so forth and so on, and it's changed over the years. But the Clarksville Bass Club is a nonprofit organization, and we do a lot of charity work. We started out with, again, the first thing we did that I remember, again, was this fishing rodeo for the kids, and that was a big deal. And Charlie, we named it after Charlie Bumpus, but we did a lot of other things too. That's just one of the first things I remember. Now there's a casting kids rodeo, contest now, and where the kids can receive scholarships and so forth. And there's just a lot of things that the Clarksville Bass Club does.
Yeah, I know that also they help with the APSU Buddy Bass Tournament every year.
Yep.
Supply the equipment and the expertise to do the weigh-in.
We actually work with them and other organizations also, which brings up another kind of a thought that I'll talk about while we're talking here. We back in the first 2 or 3 years of the club, Austin Peay was hot as a firecracker. This had been in the early 70s. And Austin Peay basketball team was extremely.
Yep.
We went nationwide.
Fly Williams and all the rest.
It's funny you mentioned Fly Williams, because what we decided to do is that we would take the Austin Peay basketball team fishing. And now you got to look at that. Fly Williams from New York City, downtown New York. I don't mean on the outskirts. I mean downtown. And so was a few other people. There was another guy there. I can't remember which one he was now.
Percy Howard.
Yeah, and Percy is one fine guy. I haven't seen him in a while, but we knew Percy real well. But anyway, there was another guy. I don't think it was Percy, but there was another fellow from New York also that never.
Howard Jackson.
Yeah, Howard Jackson. I said Percy, but I really meant Howard Jackson. Who I'm thinking about. But there was another guy. I don't think that's either one. It may have been Odom that was from New York. But anyway, there was 2 of them from New York at least that never hunted a fish or knew anything about it whatsoever. The club decided to take them fishing. Checked with Austin Peay. They said, "Oh, that'd be a great. We're doing a good community service, taking a basketball team service." So we took these fellows out, and I forget who fished with Fly Williams, but they said he was a hoot. These people had never caught a fish, and most 90% of them had never caught a fish in their life. And so they caught. I forget who fished with Fly, but he caught a small fish, very small fish, a bluegill or something. And just hoot and holler, wanted to take it home with him, and but we had a great time with the basketball team. We took some underprivileged children out. We took fishing. We had a handicapped. We've done.
Was it the Camp Rainbow? I believe?
Yeah, we worked with them some too. Camp Rainbow, yeah. But the early, and I forget some of these things. That just as we talk, I think of something off the top of my head. But the basketball team trip was it was something else, because these guys loved it, and they talked about it until they left college. Howard Jackson, I remember, it's been years ago now, but I remember years after this, I bumped into him, and he would tell me about that, man, you don't know how much that meant to us, and so forth. But a lot of good times back here, and it's really showing my age.